Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, Tim and I are talking about what to do when you're the problem. Now, this is a hard one, and we've touched upon it in other episodes, actually many episodes before, about taking ownership, taking responsibility for your actions, but we're doing a little bit more of a deep dive on it today, when you're the problem,
Yeah. And you've come to terms with it,
when you
right?
realized it,
You've realized it.
and what to do.
You've openly owned it. Is that safe to say? And then what to do.
Opened it, owned it, and opened up about it, either to, more importantly, to yourself rather than the people around you. But yeah, it does help to own it to the people around you, right?
Yeah.
But you got to start with owning it a little bit within yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that's tougher, right? Because like you have this vision of yourself as a person.
Ego.
The
ego.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, now that's going to be tainted. Like really? Like, I don't know if I want to see that. Right. We all say that.
Yeah. So before we get started, if you all want to work with me, feel free to email me hello@annamarcolene.com or go to my website, annamarcolene.com, and reach out to me, and let's get on a call together and see if I'd be a good fit for you for individual coaching. And then I also have a group coaching program coming up. So if you want to know more about that as well, feel free to reach out. Okay. I'd love to talk to you about it, and I'd love to have you in there. I'd love to get to know you and work with you. Okay, so let's get started.
Let's go.
So this came about in the last, so many of these podcast episodes are coming out of conversations that I'm having in real life with clients, friends, family members. You know, it's just, I'm always paying attention to these themes, and I will look at like my coaching notes or my therapy notes. And it's interesting because sometimes in 1 week I'll have, I don't know if it's like the way the sun and the stars and the moon are aligned. I don't know, but there are weeks where it seems like everybody's talking about some version of the same thing. So I pay attention to that. I pay attention to big conversations I have in my personal life with friends and with family members. And I think to myself, if we're having big conversations about this, then others either are also having big conversations around this or they're not, but they're interested and they want to know more about what we're talking about. So, you know, when we do these episodes, I want you all to feel like you're here with us. I wish you all could be here. I would love that. You know, having a big group discussion about these issues, which, you know, really get us going in life. You know, they make us mad. They make us feel sad. We live in our heads. You know, there's things that bring us happiness and joy. And we do talk about that on the podcast as well. But I think the real stuff in life is talking about what gets us, what are our crosses to bear? What are our burdens? What are our worries? You know, and so these are the conversations we always have. We're always talking about relationships.
And I think the bigger the conversation that led to this moment was, the more we want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like if there was a big thing that happened, right? For you at work, for me at work, with friends, with our family, at a family dinner, and it was a big thing. Like I think that gets both of our attentions, and we're like, "Ooh, that's something to talk about." And
this came out of, so I'll share with you the story with my daughter earlier in the week where I behaved in a way that I didn't behave badly, but I got emotional, really emotional about something. You could say I got emotionally dysregulated, which I did. And I got really mad at her, and then she got mad back at me. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I was at a networking meeting this morning, and I was telling somebody about, you know, just like, oh, they were telling me about a family member of theirs who was acting like kind of bitchy, basically, and that they were frustrated with this person. And I said, yeah, I know. You know, I said, it's like, what do you do? It was kind of like just a thinking out loud to myself as saying it to him. Like, what do you do when you're the problem? I said, because I've been dealing with that this week. And he said to me, I have a hard time. It was a compliment. He goes, I have a hard time believing that you're the problem. You know, he's like, you're so evolved. I was like, I am. You know, I can be the problem. I have spent a lot of years in therapy and in coaching and just my own, you know, doing my own interior work, improving it, but there's no perfection, and I screw up and I will continue to screw up. The important piece of it is to be able to eat some humble pie and say, mea culpa, I messed up, I'm sorry. So that's the ego work. But so that's where this came up. And I thought, I need to talk about this because I just had this thing with my daughter. And then 4 days later, I'm talking with somebody at a morning meeting and he's going, yeah, I don't see you being that way, but I'm having major problems with a family member who's totally like that and always thinks they're right and will never own up to anything. And they're running into all these problems in life and they're struggling with friendships. I'm like, all right, we got to talk about this. Yeah. Okay.
Too much of a coincidence, right?
Well, I almost think it's the universe saying, talk about this.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Yeah.
So self-awareness is so critical in working on your own personal growth and relationships. I mean, self-awareness is something that if you're listening to this podcast, you obviously are interested in it. There are many people out there, and you all may know them, who are not that interested. There are just people in your life, in your work life, in your personal life, in your families, with your friendships, who are not that interested in self-awareness. So you have to think about, how close you want to be to those people, how much, you want to include them in your life, and if you can keep them at arm's distance. Because if they lack self-awareness, there's going to be something about them that's going to be hard for you to relate to and get emotionally intimate with. All right. So, self-awareness is, I think it's almost everything. And I know I've talked about this here on the podcast before that we all think well, I shouldn't say we all, many people think they're just very self-aware and we realize we're not. There's always work to do on self-awareness. So, I think the way to start with this entire conversation is to admit, put your like your shoulders down, just be vulnerable and acknowledge to yourself that sometimes I am the problem. And it's okay. I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I'm the problem. And sit with that and see what comes up for you. What's percolating? Does anything percolate to the surface when you say that? And if you say to me, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that." Then I would ask you, "What are you afraid of?" If I ask you that question and you push back against me and you feel defensive, what are you afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of. You're human just like I am. We all have our pockmarks on our face. We all have our flaws and our failings. And it's so liberating just to be able to say, yeah, like I got stuff and sometimes I am the problem or sometimes I'm a major contributor to the problem.
Yeah.
I don't help situations at times.
You don't help solve it.
Yeah.
And don't you think I think there's a group of people out there. I know there's a group of people out there that know they're the problem and they don't really care. They're good with being the problem. And they don't really care what anybody else thinks about.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't think we come across it very often because that's not the circles we run in. But I think it's striking when we do come across it and we're like, whoa, that's different. Like, that's really different.
We're probably not real close to those people.
Yeah, true. But that doesn't mean they're not out there. I mean, I think
those people may not be interested, like I said earlier, in doing the work, the deep work of self-awareness.
Totally not.
And yeah, totally
not.
And owning that sometimes I am the problem. But like you said, sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm the problem. I don't give a crap. I don't care.
I'm good with being the problem.
Then we tend to probably back away.
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of you listeners do too. You'd back away from that person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
what are some signs to indicate to you when you're doing your own work here that you might be the problem? Think about someone you know. If you or someone you know has difficulty maintaining relationships in your personal or your professional life, that's often the major ding, 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 ding. Like that's to me a key signifier that there might be issues for you. If you struggle with having friendships, keeping friendships, maybe you struggle with people at work, including you in meetings, wanting to be around you, not going out, not asking you out to lunch, you start to notice it. Then that's hard. And I know it could be very painful for the person who comes to that awareness. And it's really important that you do get there. And I'm not saying this is easy work. I mean, I'm talking deep work here. And this is hard to realize that, oh, there's something that I'm doing. There's a way I'm coming across. There's a tone in my voice. There's a look on my face. There's a way I am in meetings. There's a way I am at home. There's a way I talk to my spouse. There's a way I am with my kids. There's a way I am. I've noticed that I haven't been invited to book club. There is something that I'm doing. Okay.
That might be hard to figure out too, right? I mean,
well, we're going to get to a solution for how you deal with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, I think, the number one biggest sign is that you have difficulty with relationships in your personal and or your professional life. So another one is repeating patterns of conflict or misunderstandings. You find that you keep repeating the same patterns. It's just a new face, different day, same problem. If you notice that about yourself, look at that. Okay, really important. So if you notice that different day, new friend, same misunderstandings that I'm always getting into with these people, the question is for you to ask yourself, who's the common denominator? Me. I'm the common denominator here.
Yeah.
I have these fights with friends. I've gotten into this with 3 other people over the past 10 years. I have these issues with my siblings, my adult siblings. Maybe it's you. And I know that that's so hard to admit, but lots of liberation and healing is on the way, but you got to start there. Okay.
So I hear exactly what you're saying, because I can see, I've watched this at work before where there's been a person who has had and that person has always been involved in every single bad conversation.
Yeah. They're always there.
Troubling moment, difficult resolution, all of those things.
Right.
And that person is always like dead center in it.
Yeah.
And now that you say it, it's like, okay, now I get it exactly now what you're saying.
And Tim, you probably can go back through your decades and decades of working in, corporations and in the workplace. And I know you can pick out people who, they were always at the center. They were always a problem. And every time there was some kind of conflict at work, they were always there. Because I know you've talked to me about this.
Yeah.
Over the many years.
And I can also see, I mean, if I think back, I can certainly see times where I was that person because I was involved in, let's say, trying to figure out some solution to a certain problem with a certain group of people. And like, we always got into this roadblock. And like,
were you the problem?
Yeah.
How were you the problem?
Well, because I wasn't managing it properly. I wasn't getting us all to the right resolution of that particular issue. But I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, okay, well, I was the one who was in that meeting and that meeting, that discussion.
What do you think you needed to make changes? Looking back in hindsight, what did you need? Did you need more learning, education?
I think
leadership,
so.
Management?
I think it was just more experience because I didn't really know what I was doing with that.
You didn't know how to do conflict resolution.
Right. And so, but because I was the one, like my team was like, okay, like we're all inside those, remember like those, you get inside those balls where it's like just bouncing all over the place. That's what we were doing. We're just bouncing into each other. Nothing was getting resolved.
Well, that's a good admission on your part and a really good example of maybe it's a little bit more benign, but conflicts at work and you saying I was a common denominator because I didn't know how to get us out of this ball of yarn that we were all wrapped up tight in.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to start to unravel it.
Right.
And I do think, it may have at that time been a lack of knowledge about how to lead.
Totally.
How to help people solve problems.
I was working with a new group of professionals in an area that I didn't have a background in.
Yeah.
And yet I was still the one in charge, basically given the responsibility for like leading that group. And I was trying to figure it out as much as they were trying to figure me out at the same time. So it was like, but again, I was the common denominator.
Good example. That's a really good example.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one, which this can be really, really hard for people to admit and to see within themselves, is if you have a sense of victimhood or feeling like everyone's against me, everyone's always against me, that is acting like a victim. And that's a really hard one to, I've had conversations with those people before that maybe it is you, maybe in a very gentle way. I do it in my own, professional, gentle, but direct way. And I have said, maybe you're the problem. There have been people in my practice who have said, they are the victim. And it's really hard to get people with the victim attitude out of it. It's very, very difficult for them because their ego is so fragile to raise your hand and say, okay, maybe I do have a part in this. No, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. There's something to the importance, the importance of that role of being a victim that even me sometimes, years ago, I did this work. It's hard work to get somebody to move out of this place they put themselves in of I'm always the victim in life. Oh, see, now you're telling me I'm the problem. Here am I. I'm the victim again. I'm the common
Once
denominator.
again, yeah,
I
exactly.
once again,
Yeah.
it's all my fault. I'm the victim. And they just get their back up. They get really defended, and it's really, really hard. I can't make anybody do that work. As a psychotherapist and as a life coach, this comes into both arenas of my work with people, but I can't make that person see what it is they need to see. I'm there. I walk alongside you and I help to guide you and point issues and problems out. Like I just said, like maybe part of this is to do with you. But when there's that level of defensiveness, it's hard to change that. And I will say that exactly. There is a bit of a victim attitude here. I can't change that within you. Some people can make themselves really vulnerable with me, and they will break down and they will start to look at it. I've also had clients where we can't work together right now or I'm not the best fit for you. I'm not your gal because I can't do this victim thing.
Yeah.
Really hard. Really hard.
Walk us through that real quick. So what's the first hurdle that you try and get that person over? Like if they're always going to, I'm the victim. Okay. So we need to work on this, and you need to be able to not be the victim or think you're the victim. So how do you coach that?
I will sometimes use the word victim. I mostly don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to try to not use that word and not make them feel like I'm labeling them. That I don't have any interest in labeling them, but sometimes
they've already labeled themselves.
No, they're not saying no. They're not saying they're a victim. Most people are not saying I'm a victim here, but it's in what they say and how they're thinking.
It's a victim attitude.
Yeah, and their emotions along with it. But most people are not coming and saying I'm the victim of everybody. No, they're like, everyone sucks. Everybody's out to get me. My boss is an asshole. My girlfriend, my wife, my husband, they're the worst. I mean, I have to do everything. It's always all me. A little bit of a martyr syndrome. Now, remember, as you all may know from listening to me or watching on YouTube, this is nuanced. Okay. I'm talking very much in generalities. I'm really, this is a wide umbrella here. So it's nuanced for each individual. But, if a person goes into that space, there's emotional space that's spiraling down of it's always about me, and they're not willing to look at themselves or not willing to be psychologically minded enough to look at themselves and do that introspective work, I can't get them out of it. I can't fix. Therapists and coaches, we don't fix. It's not our job to fix. We're there to help move along beside you and show you a new way, show you insights. But I can't make you be insightful. I can't make you do the work.
Yeah.
That's a hard client.
Yeah. So you got to coach them to, first of all, open up their eyes to being open to looking inside.
Yeah. And, I have to say, now I'm thinking out loud about this. I do, most people who come to me for therapy or coaching are getting on discovery calls, or we're having a call before they sign up. And I can hear it, in their voices. Coaching people coming to me, they want things done. They have action steps. They want to move forward in their lives. Therapy clients that come to me, they're not victims. I had one person a couple of years ago. I mean, she's a lovely person, but she was different. Like she was a coaching client, and she really was working on some new pathways in her life for her future. And what we found, both of us found, like several sessions into her coaching, was that she does have a victim attitude. But she was very workable because she admitted it along with my saying it. I said it and she goes, I am. You're right, I am that way. She was an older woman. I mean, she was in her 60s. So she'd lived a long time, and she spent a lot of years in therapy and never had done coaching before. And she knew coaching was a more direct way of working, and that's what she was wanting. When I talked to her about being a victim, she behaving like a victim and thinking like a victim, and that's why she couldn't do A, B, and C, which she said she wanted to do, she was mature enough and had enough life wisdom to say, you know what, Anna, you're right. I am acting like that. So that's somebody in the last few years that I worked with, coaching client, who was wonderful and did wonderful things in our coaching together.
Right.
And really we ended, gosh, I saw her for over a year. And I often think of her and I just wish her the best because she had a great result. And so she was one of the few people that was like, I didn't think I was a victim, but you're right. I am acting like a victim and I'm going to change that.
Yeah. Well, good for her.
Yeah. Good for her. Yeah. Really good for her.
Yeah.
A real success story.
Yeah.
So, okay. So difficulty maintaining relationships, personal or professional. These are some of the common signs. I'm going over them quickly. Repeating patterns of conflict or misunderstanding with people in your life. And number 3 is being a victim, having a sense of victimhood or feeling like everybody is against you. All right. Another sign of, feeling like that everyone's against you, but another sign that maybe you're the problem is you get defensive and you don't want to accept responsibility. So when anybody does talk to you about something, even in the most gentle way, you get really defensive and you're like, nope, nope, nope. You are unwilling to accept any responsibility. We know people like this. These are family members.
Sadly,
they're like,
yes.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Not going there. You're not going to say this to me. I am not accepting any responsibility. And what happens? You don't have relationships. You have distant, lots of boundaries around that person, relationships, because no one's perfect. And when you're trying to deepen and grow a relationship and you talk about something, they just are like, hell no. No way.
Yeah.
That's really, really hard. So that is a sign, if you tend to be that way, that you might be the problem. Okay. And, for you, if this is something that you've experienced in your life before, try to figure out why it's hard for you to admit that maybe you're wrong. Why is that? Why is it hard for you to admit that maybe I'm wrong? It doesn't matter how much, but being able to say, hey, mea culpa, like I messed up.
Yeah.
I screwed up.
You have a part in this.
I have a part in this.
I have a part in this.
And I will accept responsibility and own it. Maybe you don't own all of it. Maybe there's a fight or something you got into with like your brother.
Yeah.
But okay, I was wrong in that and I ought not to have said it to you in that way, right? Like I'm say you're sorry if you can. Say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Try really hard to say you're sorry. And not, I'm sorry that you feel that way, because that's not an apology. That's never an apology. It drives me crazy.
Or I'm sorry that I made you feel.
Yes.
Like
no,
you always say that. I've heard you say that 1,000 times.
That's not an apology.
It's like, you can't make me feel anything, can you? I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I did that. I'm sorry that I said that. Okay?
Yeah.
So
I think that's as important, the way you say it, right? You need to say it, but it's also the way you say it.
It's a delivery.
Yeah.
So defensiveness and a lack of accountability, if this is something that you have within you. Now, I'm asking you as you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube to do some deep work right now on yourself. This is like your soul work. If you are somebody who gets defensive and someone who lacks accountability when you're called out on something, why is that? Why is that? There's so much more I could say. I could easily turn this into like a day-long conference because this is so important, but I'm trying to go quickly through this. Okay. And then we talked about ego. One of the ways that you may know that you're the problem is when you are all in your ego about how you show up in life. So, your ego can distort reality and create problems. Your ego can distort the way you see things. So that is something that you might need outside help with, because we are subjective, but we can't see ourselves always. We need somebody else on the outside to come in who we trust, we feel psychologically safe with, not your neighbor, not your friend, someone in, usually it's a coaching or therapeutic setting, who you get to know, who can really help you with this and help you to put your defensiveness down, like put your guns down, so to speak, like just lay yourself bare and look at yourself. Okay. That's really important, because the ego really steps in and really gets in our way and really causes really all these problems that we're talking about when you're the problem.
Yeah.
All right. When you are living in your ego in relationships with family and friends, coworkers, when you're in your ego all the time, that's going to contribute to problems in your life. It's going to contribute to problems. So I always say, I would say to myself in my early years of being a therapist and being a coach, Anna, leave your ego at the door. When I was when I was in my late 20s, I was more insecure about myself starting out in my practice. And I wanted to be sure that I said the things and part of the knowledge that I knew from, all of my studying and my conferences and all my, experience, my clinical experience. And then as I started to evolve and grow as a therapist and coach, it's like, leave your ego at the door. And I would actually say that to clients too. Leave your ego at the door, especially with couples and family members. When I was doing family therapy and couples, I said to couples all the time, ego at the door, leave it there. Because when you're in your ego, you're not going to be able to do that really important work with your life partner or your boyfriend, girlfriend, your mate, if you're all about your ego. When we put our egos down and we get vulnerable and we allow ourselves to be exposed a little bit, that's where the really good work comes in.
Yeah.
When you and I went to our couples therapist when we first got married, that was something that I noticed that you did, and I believe I did it. But we both just put our egos at the door, and we were willing to. I mean, we're taking the time out on a weeknight to go to therapy with kids at home. I think the kids were a little bit old. We either got a babysitter or Samantha was old enough to watch them.
It was a while ago, yeah.
But it was a thing. Like it was, and I empathize with families because we had to, get a time in the calendar that we both could go in the evening, and we're paying this good money, but we needed to work on this issue. And one thing I noticed about you was that we were really open, like an open book to what the therapist had to say to us. And we would, in an indirect way, by her, be called out on our stuff. And it was through listening to you talk to her, the therapist would ask you questions about the situation or about me, that I was able to really learn and to grow. But I had to put my ego down, and I had to go in there saying, all right, I am just completely this is not at all about being right. This is about getting our family to a emotionally healthier place.
Right.
In the early years when it was rough.
Yeah, it was rough. Kids. And I think so, to your point, like we both had to work together, even though we both were maybe, I don't even remember exactly what we were talking about. I mean, I generally do, but like the specifics of it. But I know that you and I saw part of that issue differently because we were looking at it from a different way.
Of course.
Right. But
and we also could not come to agreement. I mean, that's what was so hard is that, I remember I would say to myself, I'm a therapist, but I'm a wife and a mother here. I can't be the therapist for our family, and it's not good for your family because I'm me, I'm mom and I'm wife. But you and I could not come to agreement on certain kids' personalities and how to parent them. And it just was so hard.
Yeah.
And that's what I knew. We got to talk to somebody because I'm getting so mad at you. You're getting so frustrated with me. We just kept coming to blows, like verbal. We're not really yellers at each other, but just headlock. We were like two rams, locked horns.
Yeah.
And we stayed locked. It just wasn't getting better.
Well, I think we were at the dead end of trying to figure out how to make that better or fix it.
And so
that's where, but what I was trying to say is like, you and I worked together, even though we were coming at it from two different sides. To the fascinating part, if you were like a fly on the wall to watch it, probably even for like the therapist, was like to watch two people, different opinions on the exact same thing, but yet be willing to drop their perspective,
drop the ego
enough to listen to the other person, and then be like, okay, I see where you're coming from. And then I think at some point we kind of met in the middle when we were like, okay, I could see a little bit of this, and I can see a little bit of that, and I can see a whole bunch of this, and we made it work.
Well, I always left those sessions with more understanding of the entire situation and really an empathy towards you, because I finally understood your perspective. And it took a third person coming in. And really for me, I can't underscore the importance of listening to you and her talking to each other about the situation. So then I got to be the third person fly on the wall, listening. She was asking you what you thought, what you felt, why you did that. How come you said it that way? And I was like, oh, okay. Now I understand. I may not like it, but now I understand why Tim did what he did and said what he said, or why he didn't do what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't always understand, but that does help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to put our egos aside when we walked in that office.
Right. I think that's another great point, is that like I probably didn't say anything that was new news that you heard. You just heard it
differently.
You heard it slightly differently because I was not saying it to you. I was saying it to somebody else.
Exactly.
Right? And you were like, okay, okay. Because like when we're hearing something and we're interpreting it differently for ourselves.
Well, it's narrative therapy.
Yes.
So I
go.
was listening to it. It is a therapy.
Yeah.
So I was watching your narrative with her. And so I'm watching, this is narrative therapy. It's Tim's story. It's not for me it was almost like not for me to have an opinion or agree or disagree. It just is Tim's story. It's Tim's perspective.
Yeah.
So, and
because when you heard it the first time, it was your place to question it, right? Because you were like, well, I don't know if I agree with that, or I don't know if I see it that way, right? So I mean, that's human nature.
I would possibly at times, I would, I'm sure, and then we would.
And so did I. I'm sure there were things that you said, and I was like, I don't know.
It's important to me that the supplements I take are of the highest quality, and that's why for 5 years I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 conducts relentless testing to set the standard for purity and potency. I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because it's tested for 950 contaminants and banned substances, while the industry standard typically only tests for 10. Taking care of my health shouldn't be complicated, and AG1 simplifies this by covering my nutritional basis and setting myself up for success in just 60 seconds. AG1's ingredients are heavily researched for efficacy and quality, and I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. So if you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/Anna. That's drinkag1.com/Anna. Check it out. You will not regret it.
Up until about 3 years ago, I was doing couples therapy. I did couples therapy for 15 years. I always saw parents. I always saw families because when I worked in eating disorders, I was the family therapist in an eating disorder program in a hospital setting. So I cut my teeth many, many years ago seeing families, high chaos, high dysfunction, a lot of just chaos and freneticness. In eating disorders, we often say, and when there's I was going to say mental illness, but I won't go that far, but I will say, well, I will go that far because I just had this conversation this afternoon with a client. When mental illness is in a family and it's causing, and there's not a therapist involved, and there's not medication involved, the whole family gets sick. So it becomes a family system problem. Mm. And so I cut my teeth doing that work with I'm telling you, I could write a book about some of the crazy family therapy sessions I've had over the past 30 years. I mean, some of them I kind of chuckle, some of them just crazy. Like I think to myself, we were watching the Menendez brothers documentary, and that
fascinating,
that therapist,
yeah,
when he admitted to the therapist that he killed his parents, and the therapist look on his face, and I was sweating I was perspiring.
Well, because you thought,
sweating.
What if that was me? What was I going to do?
Yes. Yeah. Well, because I have never heard anything like that, thank God, and I hope I never do. But I've heard family secrets come out. I've been there when a secret in my office has come out to another person, and I'm like, I'm so very, not today, but so very used to those many years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, sweating, like pitting out, sweating through my clothes, and actually having deodorant at my desk because I had to reapply deodorant because I was seeing such high conflict, crazy cases. Okay. The people weren't crazy, but the situations were crazy.
The situations
so
were definitely crazy.
Let me clarify that, but there were some crazy situations.
Yeah.
So I was used to that and very comfortable with it. And also I'm from a large Italian family. We're all loud and we can be chaotic. So I grew up with it. But when I saw couples, I could predict, like John Gottman, could predict in 90 seconds if a couple is going to divorce or not. I could predict if a couple wasn't going to make it. And I wasn't as excellent at this as John Gottman, who studied this and researched this for years, John and Julie Gottman. And I think Nan Silver, she's the co-author of the book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. By the way, everybody, that's a wonderful book for you all to read by John Gottman and Nan Silver. I think I may have mentioned it on here before. And this isn't even for people who are in marriages. This is something for you to read if you're in any relationship with your sister, your mom, your dad. This is a great book. So I recommend everybody read it. It should be on in everyone's bookshelf at home. But he could predict divorce like within, I think, like 90 seconds or 2 minutes of observing a couple. I wasn't that good, but I could observe it. I could see it. I would tell myself, and I would tell them, why were you not here 4 years ago? Now you're at a crisis point because someone has got one or both feet out the door. But it was that ego when they were so defended and one or both would not let their ego down, would not be vulnerable, would not deal with, would not allow them to be themselves to be exposed. Now, it's often about trauma. It's often about shame, but it's also ego. Then it was so difficult to do that work. It really was.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That is tough.
Okay. So we went off on a major segue, but I think these are important stories.
Yeah.
You know?
No, for sure. They're helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do? Okay. So, the role of ego. Okay. Really important. Why does all this happen? Why do we get ourselves to this situation in life where it's like, why am I the problem? Am I the problem? Okay. Yeah, maybe I am part of the problem, but why is it that way? There are a few reasons. It can be your past conditioning and your family of origin issues. And that's what I was going to say earlier, but I stopped myself. I always have compassion and empathy for these individuals who are able to say to me, part of this is me. Because now as a therapist, I'm going to do this deep dive with you. And lo and behold, here comes out the unresolved issues, stuff from your childhood, stuff from the way you were treated when you were a kid. Maybe you always do want to be right now because you were ignored and you had no voice when you were a kid and no one cared what you thought or you said. Maybe you were actually built up too much and everybody thought that you were the golden child and you were so great you wreaked havoc in your home and you were a little shit and no one ever had boundaries with you. And now you are 24 years old, you're 34, you're 54, and you have no friends because you know why? That little shit that was indulged and praised at the age of 7 and 12 and 17, you're now an asshole and nobody wants to be around you.
Yeah.
And you haven't done the personal development work to change that. All right. So family of origin issues can come from anywhere, but it could be from, I mostly see it from people who they get very defensive and we break through that wall of defensiveness. Here comes the shame. Here comes depression, anxiety, sadness. There's usually trauma in there, either the little t or sometimes it's the big T of something that was done to them or said to them. And that's why they are so heels dug in about being right all the time now.
Yeah.
And that's why you're the problem.
I was thinking earlier, I was thinking about you don't because you work from home, but like many people spend a lot of time at an office or their place of work and they know their team or their coworkers as workers, right?
Yeah.
You know them as for the time, the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day that you spend with them 5, 6, 7 days a week, whatever it is, right? But you don't always know what goes on the rest of their day, right? Like what they're bringing to the table, right? And so to your point though, like a lot of the stuff that happens outside of work very well could be influencing what goes on at work in terms of like
absolutely
that, and maybe that's why they're always irritable, or that's why
I think we're carrying our house in a sack on our back.
Yeah.
Like we're carrying our lives around.
Yeah.
You are the culmination of your whole life from the moment you were born and you took that first breath. You're carrying all that around.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that. We forget that. Remember, 0 to 3 is personality development. You're born with your temperament. That's your genetics. But you're born, that's where you're developing your character. Your personality is really coming out. 0 to 3, the moment you're born till 3 years old. Most of us don't have many memories of those early years. But that was when such important stuff was going on for you or not for you in your early life as a child, as a little preschooler, a toddler.
Right.
A lot was going on then.
Like, what does that day look like for you?
So let's just talk about 0 to 3 alone.
Yeah.
So to put it in perspective for everyone who's listening and watching, Then take yourself from 3 to 6, then go 6 to 9, or do like 6 through 12. Do your elementary school years. Do what was happening then. Do junior high, middle school, do high school, all of that. Talk about college. What happened in college? The brain, the mind remembers all of it. We don't remember everything. It's all getting tucked away into our unconscious. They say the unconscious is like 90% of our mind. And the subconscious is what, like 7%, and the conscious is 3%. If that's true, there's no way you can remember all that's happened in your life and how it has informed you. So yes, it's like you're carrying around like Santa, a big sack on your back. You're carrying that around and you're bringing that to every interaction today.
Yeah.
The meeting you have to go to tomorrow at 9 a.m. Maybe you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. You didn't get great sleep last night. Maybe you had a little bit of a passive aggressive conversation with your spouse before you left for work. And you're like, I didn't get great sleep and he's annoying the hell out of me. Then you go to this meeting and you're just surly. You're grumpy. You're not in a great mood. Okay. So you have what just happened with your spouse, but then you may also have a lot of stuff that you've been carrying around deep inside of you from years and years and years of someone treating you like you're you feeling like you're being treated like you're less than.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to come out.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it because like when we interview people, right? So you're trying to surround yourself with people that are similar to you maybe in values or, some of the attributes,
Yes.
they're honest, they're whatever, fill in the blank. There's millions of things you could say. So you only get a small window of time to interview somebody. So it's like you have to be really diligent with the types of questions you bring to the table. Because I think more so, and maybe even more than I'm thinking I used to do it in the past, like it should be really all about trying to discover that person as a person.
Right.
Right? They bring certain skills to the table. They check certain boxes that got them to the interview. Right? You didn't get.
Are you talking about podcast interviews?
No. I'm talking about something like a job interview.
Oh, okay.
Like you come in, like your resume and things that you spelled out, and maybe that screen.
Yeah, and actually, it resonates for podcast interviews too.
Yeah. But
anytime you're getting to know somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And so certain things got you to that chair, right? And then I think it falls to the employer and the people that are involved in that interview process to really kind of sift through all of that stuff, which is just, we don't care what school you went to. We don't care about all of those things necessarily. We know we care that you did them all.
Yeah.
We don't need to hear about that. What we do need to hear about is you as a person, right? Because that's the person we're going to work with every day. And I think we forget that a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, and then I think then when you have a miss on an interview, then you hire the wrong person and you discover it later, then you're like, oh.
And you're like, they're the problem.
Yes. But it was my fault because I didn't see that, right? Like I didn't ask the right question.
That's another episode.
It is another episode, but it's like, it's interesting like how that all works together.
Okay. So let's get back though. So like, why does this happen? So number one is it's your conditioning. And for many, many of us, it's family of origin issues that are unresolved that we haven't really clearly looked at. Number two is cognitive biases and your blind spots. Now, I did a whole episode on blind spots a couple of years ago. Really, really important work in both the therapy and coaching world. I do it with both therapy and coaching clients. I don't know that all therapists do blind spot work. It's really important. So it's looking at yourself from another person's perspective. And that's exactly this conversation about maybe I'm the problem. Well, you have to do blind spot work in order to get yourself to the point where you're like, oh, shoot, I am the common denominator here. Okay. So, your perceptions and your cognitive biases can skew your reality. That's why you need another person to come in and to help you out and tell you what they see. And you have to humble yourself and make yourself vulnerable enough to be able to, even if you don't see it, to listen to them and take stock of it. Okay. It's the importance of understanding that your view, my view, let's say I'm the problem, my view isn't the only perspective. Other people have other perspectives, and to listen to that and let it hold some weight. It doesn't mean that you're all wrong. You may be right. I may be right, but it doesn't mean that they're all wrong either. They might be right too. And And it's not about right or wrong. It's just like, hey, they've got another perspective. Then, okay, that's hard for me to swallow this, but okay. And that for me is, here comes my ego, and I got to let that ego down. Got to let it go and realize that people come from other angles,
right,
and have other viewpoints.
right.
Okay. And another reason, why we may struggle with realizing that we are the problem is just our own insecurities and being the fear of being vulnerable. It's almost like, I don't want you to think that I'm the problem, so I'm not going to make myself vulnerable. I'm just going to keep my back up, and I'm just going to say no, not accept responsibility, because I'm afraid. I am insecure, and I'm afraid that, you're going to see a side of me that I don't even really want to see. And then you're going to see it. Hell no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And just skip it. Just push forward.
Yeah. And at the end, it's about, at the end, it's about more than other people seeing your vulnerabilities. It's you seeing your vulnerabilities, which I mentioned before about seeing, like, I use the example of, like, pock marks, chicken pox all over your face. We got them as kids, like we're all disfigured, like seeing that you've got a disfigurement of some sort, and it may not be on the outside, but it's on the inside. And it's okay, because every single one of us has a disfigurement of some sort.
Yeah.
And the way to work through that disfigurement is to allow yourself to accept the idea that, and I'm going right into this, of what to do about it. What to do when you realize you're the problem. And I'm going to just start with it. It's radical self-awareness. Start to work on getting self-aware on, I have these disfigurements on the inside. And the number one is that I am the problem. And I hate to admit it. It's hard for me to look at that. And I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And if you have done that in your life, give yourself a huge pat on the back. Bravo, brava to you. That's really, really important work, and keep on doing it. Okay. There are ways that you could increase your self-awareness if you just are starting out on this journey. Number one, I'd say to journal. Journaling is really important. There's something about pen to paper. Science research proves this. It's not in your phone. It's actually writing pen to paper. I've started a new audio journaling, which is second best. It's not as great as pen to paper, but I will do it when I'm walking. And that has helped me. It's an app I have. And it kind of spits back out everything I said. And then it throws ideas for me to work on my journal entries for the week, which I absolutely love. So, just spending time journaling, self-reflection, and getting feedback. That's blind spot work. Getting feedback from people, going to people that you trust, and say, you know what, I've had this like major revelation, like a light bulb moment went off, and I'm realizing with certain situations and people in my life, I am the problem. I'm the common denominator. Get feedback from people that, you're psychologically safe with. I don't want them to hurt you. I don't want them to hurt you more, because if you are at this place, you're already feeling pretty raw. So, be gentle with your tender heart of who you share this with, but let them give you some feedback in a loving way. Okay. And then another thing to do with radical self-awareness is really just being mindful. Mindfulness is so, so important here, and learning to catch your harmful patterns of, when you're the problem. So this is the work. This is not something that you're going to be able to air quote fix, because we're not fixing this. This is something that you're going to be working on, I would say, for years. This is a life's work. It's not something that I could say to a client, okay, I need you now in the next week to start working on being mindful of catching yourself acting like a victim, Well, no, it's going to be,
it's not a light switch.
No,
you're not flipping it.
And this really is ongoing coaching.
Yeah.
And it's months of working together. Some people, it's years. And they say to me a couple years later, or a year later, some people, it was you constantly reminding me, and I had you in my head, Anna. And that's a great compliment too. Like, I had you in my head reminding me to be mindful of, what are you doing right now? What are you doing right now? And those are the work I do with my individual clients. And I love it when they say that, because I know, like, okay, first of all, we're a fit in our relationship with each other, but they've really bought in, and they're really doing this work. And they say, like 3 times in the past month, I was totally unaware of everything you and I talked about in our sessions. I'm aware of the sessions, but when I get back to my life, everything goes out the window. But then that fourth time, I started to see myself getting really defensive with my husband or my wife. And I wanted to kick my boyfriend out of the house. And I realized, wait. Here, I'm doing it right now. I'm the problem. He didn't do anything. I'm just in a really bad mood today because of the kids and something with work. And I'm causing these problems right now. I'm causing the chaos right now.
Right.
There you go. And it's one time in a month that she caught herself. And there you go. That's start.
Yep.
So
it's almost like you need to succeed once, right? You need to feel success.
Yeah.
To be like, oh,
success of knowing
that's it.
Shoot, I'm the problem.
Right. But that's an acknowledgement of like, oh, okay, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like looking at it.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Okay. And so that's radical self-awareness. Number 2, take accountability, and I've been saying it, you've been saying it throughout this entire episode, that it's so important for you to acknowledge your part in problems, conflicts, or issues in your life. Just start acknowledging it, that you play a part. Take accountability.
Yeah.
If you can take accountability, you're on your way. You are on your way. I think it's so big. All right. And then, of course, I'm going to say this because I think everybody ought to, at some point in their life, be in therapy, get a coach, be working on self-improvement. If you are working and you're interested in self-improvement, personal development, get yourself into therapy, get yourself into coaching, find the person that's the best fit for you, but do that work. You will thank yourself for how much you have evolved and how much you will have grown. Okay. I mean, yes, I'm biased because this is the field I'm in, but I know the work that my clients have done. I know the work that my friends and family members have done with their therapists and their coaches. I just was a guest on a podcast this morning, someone else's podcast. And before we started, she was saying, I'm excited to meet you and have you come on and talk about, whatever we were talking about. And she said, my life coaches, I wouldn't be where and she's very successful. She said, I would not be where I am today in my work life or in my professional life. It wasn't for my life coaches. They're the ones who got me to where I am because they're the ones who really helped me work on these issues, that I was dealing with, personal development issues. So, I think that if you were at this place in your life when you're struggling with, you always want to be right, you're having problems in relationships, your intimate relationships are suffering, please get somebody to talk to. Maybe you need psychotherapy because maybe you've got some trauma, you got some childhood stuff you got to work on. Hey, if you're in Illinois, reach out to me and let's work together. If you're in other states, I can certainly coach you on this. I'm not going to do trauma work with you because as a life coach, I don't do the intense trauma work. That's psychotherapy. But many people come to me who have this exact issue and I'm coaching them through it. And it is really fun and really special to watch people grow out of this.
Yeah.
But you got to do the deep dive and the deep work.
Right.
Okay. So please, I hope that this was helpful. I mean, we went longer
than we were. It's good stuff. Yeah, it's good stuff. We went longer,
but this is, it's important.
I think we can all relate to it on both sides or all three sides in this particular case.
So let's just end with the story of, which we didn't tell. So what happened this week at the very end. So those of you who are still listening, you'll hear the story of vulnerability on my part about here I am, I have done all this work and one of our kids is dating somebody whose family member lives one street over from us. And she lives in the city with her boyfriend and she was going to her boyfriend's house. Now I had just seen her on Friday because I was down in the city with my other daughter and we did like a girls' day out. And she was up here on Sunday and she didn't come over. I knew she was here, but she didn't come over. And I got really upset. I took it very personally and so did you, that you're here, you're in our town and you're one street over, but you can't come over and say hello to us. And we both called her, you called her and kind of read her the riot act. And then I got into the next day, I went to bed. You got into an argument with her. She was so mad at us. And she got very defensive. I don't really blame her. And then on Monday morning, I called her and she's like, hello. She was really mad at me. And I had talked it through with you. I'd talked it through with one of my other kids. And I had calmed myself down and was able to realize and to think, what is my part in this? And I'm telling you all, this is hard to do. What is my part in this? I have a part in this. I actually created all this drama, but I was mad at her because it came from a place of love and desire to want to see her. But she also was establishing a boundary and setting a boundary for, I just saw you on Friday, Mom. Yes, just because my boyfriend's family lives in the same town as you, I'm not always going to see you maybe every single time I'm up there. I got to spend time with his family as well. She's absolutely right. And that was a conversation we had on Monday. And I said to her, I'm sorry, and I will work on this. I am learning. I'm still learning. My kids are getting older and they have, we have future in-laws coming in and this is new territory for me. And I'm going to need to know that every time she's up here, I'm not always going to see her. And so I learned from it, but I had to be able to put my ego down and to everything I said in this entire episode. And I just said, I was sorry and that I'll do better. And it was really healing. I think it was really healing for her to hear me say, I'm sorry and to say that I will work on it. But it was hard to do because initially in the very beginning, I wanted to be right and I wanted to make my point and I wanted her to know that this is not right and you need to come here when you're in our town and every single time. And she, came back, she's an adult and she kind of clapped right back at me and she really kind of set me straight. I'm like, okay. If you want to, and I'm like, if I want to have relationships with my kids, I can't be like that.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning. You're still learning.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's the end. And that was the conversation, with a client. It wasn't a client, with a friend this morning in a networking meeting. And then that big conversation with my daughter earlier in the week that got me thinking I need to talk about this because these are conversations that I'm in situations that conversations people are not having and many situations that people are in that they don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful for you. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast with 5 stars. It makes all the difference in the world. Okay. Hope that this is helpful. Mad love, everyone.